You're Locked On NHL, your daily podcast on the National Hockey League. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome back to the Locked On NHL podcast. It is time for our bi-weekly segment on women's hockey. And when we do that, we always welcome in Erica Ayala, also the host of Locked On Kraken. And Erica, welcome back to the show. Always great to have you.
Sorry about that. I forgot how podcasts work for a minute. Thanks so much for having me back. Always a pleasure to join both you and Rachel, and of course to talk not just hockey, but women's hockey.
So, biggest story of the week. Let's start there.
Yeah, absolutely. Last time we spoke for the women's hockey spotlight, we of course were talking about the U18 Women's World Championships. That tournament not only has started, but is already into the semifinals. And there's one player in particular that we're going to start with, Gil and Rachel, and that is Nela Lopusanova. She is the leading scorer for not only the Slovakian team, but for the entire tournament. She's got 7 goals and 3 assists, and one of those goals has been making its rounds because she successfully executed the Michigan, and so she's been getting a lot of shine. 14 years old and already tearing up international competition.
Very
unbelievable.
Go ahead, Rachel.
So how is her team doing overall?
So for Slovakia, unfortunately, they couldn't find their way to the semifinals. I think they had a solid tournament, definitely middle of the pack for this women's tournament, but they weren't able to get past some of the more heavy hitters, the more consistent teams, which of course includes the United States, Canada, and then Sweden, who is hosting this year, and Finland.
And who are some of the standout players from the tournament that caught your eye?
Oh, there's been a lot of players. I know we talked about some of the players that would be missing just because they have aged out. But you have goaltenders like Hannah Clark for Canada, who is leading the tournament in save percentage. Then you also have Talina Benderer for Switzerland, and she has the best goals against average at 1.33. So I think I always like looking at the goalie stats, because if you look at some of these teams that, again, are maybe not top 4, a lot of the times their goaltenders are their best players, and they see a barrage of shots and are often the players that are keeping their team in games. That being said, of the 4 teams remaining in the tournament, you also see that Sweden overall as a unit, they have the most shots saved and the most goals for. So they've pushed aside 148 shots in the tournament and also have potted in 17 goals. So I think it's going to be interesting to see how Sweden on home ice is going to perform the rest of the way.
Do you think that makes them the favorite in the Final Four here?
It still doesn't make them the favorite. The favorites are the United States for sure. And, the favorites are the United States and Canada, I should say, for sure. Those 2 teams continue to be dominant. We know that Canada is looking to repeat, whereas the United States played very well last year and didn't necessarily like how they were able to perform, especially offensively in the gold medal match. So they might have an axe to grind now that we are in the semifinal.
Yeah, and the United States and Sweden are facing each other next. So I am very intrigued by this matchup, because we know that Sweden did beat the United States in pre-tournament action.
That's right. They beat them pre-tournament. Sweden has also fared well in this particular IHF tournament against both the United States and Canada. And again, they are hosting. And if we go back to the senior tournament, Rachel, I know you know this, but the 2019 Women's Worlds in Finland ended in controversy. And so
very much so.
Yes, I'm sure Sweden, if they can avoid that, they would love to do that. They really did keep the United States in check early. That first game in the prelims, lots of penalties for both sides, but ultimately the US was able to pull away late in the game. So if Sweden can keep things tight, this could be a really good matchup.
How big a factor is being the host country in your mind?
I think it definitely plays in. You know, we were alluding 2019, Finland is hosting again. They're one of the top 4 teams on the senior side of things, but you have the energy of the crowd at every single game. This is international competition, so you're playing for pride. You're playing for the pride of your country. And I think you can't overestimate how much a home crowd really impacts younger players as well. Generally speaking, in any sport, the younger the talent, the more heightened the emotions can get, which is why we love watching these junior tournaments. And so that can really be, again, not just a source of pride, but the energy that you need in a tournament that is both short and long at the same time.
What are some of the other big stories you're looking at this week?
Well, of course, we've returned to action in the NCAA and U Sports system and in professional hockey, women's hockey. So we'll start with a weekend game that's happening in the Premier Hockey Federation. The Pittsburgh Penguins and the PHF have partnered once again. They have done so for the last handful of years. They've hosted a neutral site game. And as it turns out, all of those games have been the Connecticut Whale playing at home in Pittsburgh. And this year they will host the expansion team, the Montreal Force. What I really like about this game, Gil and Rachel, is that the Connecticut Whale have reached back into the history of women's hockey in the Pittsburgh area, and they will be honoring the Pittsburgh Pennies, including having, I believe it's 5 original members of that organization. Of course, they weren't playing professionally.
Wow.
Yeah, it's really exciting. They're going to have 5 original members there. They're going to have throwback jerseys. The Heinz Center, which is a historical center in Pittsburgh, has been involved in promoting it. So I'm really excited for that. A little bit gutted that I can't be there, but it's going to be a good time. And speaking of NHL and women's pro hockey partnerships, the Tampa Bay Lightning have partnered once again. It's been announced with the PWHPA. That's a primarily Canadian-based women's pro league, and February 24th through 26th, so next month, that is going to take place at the Lightning's facility, and that will include a Try Hockey for Free clinic that will be hosted by former pro hockey player in the NWHL, which of course the PHF inherits that history, and that's the one and only Kelly Stedman. Man, that was a fun player to watch, has been through the coaching ranks in the NCAA, and will be hosting a Try Hockey for Free clinic with the PWHPA. And then finally, I mentioned NCAA is returning to action. We've already had a lot of pretty good games, but I'll take this moment to also talk about a game that I will be calling. I will be the play-by-play announcer on NESN today as the Vermont Catamounts take on the Providence Friars in Hockey East action. These two teams took to the ice last weekend, and Vermont swept at home ice. So now the Friars looking to tilt the ice in their favor. That's going to be at 7 p.m. Eastern time, again on NESN.
Well, that is exciting.
Excellent.
I wish you all the best. And
yeah, I do want to go back to Pittsburgh a little bit because, you know, I think that I feel like there's this giant spotlight on the city of Pittsburgh and women's hockey that both the PHF and the PWHPA have held events there. I was recently at the PWHPA showcase in Pittsburgh, and it was a wonderful event. And you have to think that Pittsburgh is at the top of a list of any official expansion for a league.
Yeah, Rachel, I'm glad that you asked that because you're absolutely right. Not only the PWHPA and the PHF in recent years, the PHF/NWHL has had an all-star weekend there. Actually, Amanda Kessel was the captain for one of those teams and won, and that was while her brother Phil Kessel was still playing in Pittsburgh. Of course, he's moved on since, but so we're going back. That was about 2017, and almost every year except for those COVID years in between, whether it's college showcases, whether it's women's professional hockey, or even the national teams. There was a time where there's a tournament called Four Nations, where, as you probably guessed, 4 countries come together and play, and it's more of an exhibition tournament. And Sweden was supposed to host that, but due to some conflicts they were having with their federation, that got canceled. And so Pittsburgh and the Penguins stepped in, and the United States and Canada actually hosted a co-branded kind of exhibition and training camp. So the Pittsburgh market, to your point, not only do we now know that they have women's hockey history, but they've been engaged at all levels. And so I do think it's only a matter of time. Do they go with one league versus another? Do they continue to host the PWHPA and the NCAA and the PHF and just kind of be an open market? I don't know what that looks like, but I think you're absolutely right. We have to circle Pittsburgh now when it comes to women's hockey. And then, of course, you've got actually somewhere where Kelly Stedman used to coach or was an executive in Robert Morris, kind of in that area. So there's also a lot of college hockey that's coming up in the ranks.
Should be interesting and some great hockey to look forward to. Good luck tonight, Erica. Why don't you tell our viewers and our listeners where they could find you and where they could find more information about women's hockey?
Yeah, thank you so much. Well, I'd be remiss if I didn't say go check out Locked on Kraken, because I was at that game last night as the Seattle Kraken took down the Boston Bruins. So you best believe we're going to talk about that. And also we have Jason Hernandez, who's one of our own in the Locked On family, who's been tapped as the Coachella Valley Firebirds PA announcer. So we're going to have him on Friday's episode. And you can follow me at elindsay08. That's ELINDSAY08. And of course, as part of the Locked On Network, you can find Locked On Kraken on YouTube, as well as anywhere you get your audio podcasts.
All right, Erica, always a pleasure. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks, Gil. Thanks, Rachel. Enjoy your weekend, everyone.
Your friends at BetOnline. BetOnline.net is your #1 source for sports betting info, stats, news, and analysis. Get the latest odds and trends for every professional and amateur league out there, from pro football, and you got college and pro basketball, soccer, and of course the NHL. We've got it all at betonline.net. And if you love sports podcasts, you could find those at BetOnline as well. We're always the fastest and easiest way to get your betting info. And with a big weekend slate of games coming up, maybe you want to use your expertise to get a little money and check it out. The odds at betonline.net. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more. Bet Online, where the game starts.